So what do I need to say about you for introduction? Keep it short?
Keep it short.
All right, sounds good. And let's see if we are.
Ellen, it's under videos. Ethan Maui videos.
Yes. Okay. 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 All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you, if anyone is watching, that you will be patient for just one more moment while we finish the rest of our technical difficulties. Okay, it looks like we are doing the live thing. So I will get this over onto Facebook in just a moment. We are about 5 minutes late starting. And let's see here. So welcome everyone to the University of Hawaii Institute for Astronomy Haleakala edition, or Haleakala location, I don't know, site. And this is our public talks. Hope that people have been able to join us at this point. If not, we'll put a copy of this on the archive. It's a pleasure to have Bernie Taylor return to us. And notice I did not refer to you as a different Bernie, though well-esteemed Bernie. Bernie is an author and scholar. He has some, what I've noticed is he's very good with archaeological astronomy. I think that's hopefully a good way to describe your area of expertise. And before I make too many more mistakes, I am going to turn the time over to Bernie. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. Pleasure to be back here for my third appearance. Now, just to let you know, I'm looking at my phone off to the side. I don't see my image, but I do see yours. Okay.
Okay. We'll have to edit that out.
Okay, that's fine. We're good. So thank you. Today's program is Cosmic Mountains in the Sky. Why do we climb mountains without apparent gain, sing about their majestic peaks in our songs, and peer into the great beyond from their lofty summits? How far back in time could these connections have existed, or are they somehow part of our being human? In this presentation, Cosmic Mountains in the Sky, we will look into the Paleolithic mind that I believe to be our own, so as to examine these questions and perhaps find cosmic relationships with mountains that connect us all. First, thank you for giving this opportunity to speak here again at the Maui Institute for Astronomy at the UH. My name is Bernie Taylor, and my work explores mankind's creative and intellectual origins through Ice Age art. And I just changed the slide. Did the slide change from your side?
Okay. Maui.
Okay, here we go. Slide changed. Okay. When we think about Ice Age art, mountains don't usually come to mind. One might recall artifacts such as these exquisitely engraved batons from Cantabria, Spain, or cave paintings such as the Chamber of the Polychromes at the Cave of Altamira. So changing on my side, I can do this. I can switch to a main Okay, so it's changing from your side as well. Or cave paintings, such as the chamber polychromes at Altamira. Some cave images are found in Paridolia, that apparently unique ability in the human mind to find faces of people and other animal beings in geological formations, the clouds and constellations among the stars. Astronomy is founded in Paridolia. Without our Paridolia ability, we would be lost in the night sky. The Upper Paleolithic cave artists saw natural irregularities in these rocks at Altamira that had the impression of horse heads and then dressed them up with black features. Pablo Picasso borrowed Paridolia-based images from Altamira to use in his 1907 Les Demoiselles d'Avignon that has been called the rupture moment in modern art. The imagery is consistent with the Spanish artist's quote, "It occurred to man to create his own images. It's because he discovered them in the world around him, almost formed or ready within his grasp. He saw them in a bone, in the regular surfaces of cavern walls, in a piece of wood. One form might suggest a woman, another a bison." I'm in agreement with Picasso that art was first found in our minds as we viewed natural objects and then projected our visions onto them. How could one not agree? He is Picasso. The Spanish artist recognized the source of the mask in Altamira that he reused in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Yet Picasso may not have considered other sources of Paridolia before we marked on bone, cavern walls, and pieces of wood. What if Paridolia was sometimes observed away from these substrates and then projected into the lines found in them? To test this hypothesis, we must first travel to another place in northern Spain to view the mountain Chindoki, whose peak is about 1,300 meters. My pronunciation of the Basque names are not likely correct, but they are spelled correctly in this presentation. Chindoki is sacred among the Basque people who have inhabited this region since at least the Neolithic. The origins of the Basque are an enigma, as their language is not connected to any other European language groups. The Basque believe that their mother nature deity Mari seasonally dwells in Marizolo, a cave on Chindoki. Marizolo literally means Mary's cave. One can see the climbing route to Marizolo with the cave marked by the blue arrow. This cave is on the other side of Chindoki that we viewed in the previous slide. Mary dwells in caves in two other sacred Basque mountains as well. While mountains in general are important to the Basque and are at the foundation of their creation myths, Chindoki is one of the most important mountains in Basque culture. Cosmic mountains just don't emerge from the earth or ocean. These sacred peaks connect with the sky world, just as they do here on our Hawaiian islands. This image of Chindoki, as marked with the red arrow, was taken from the position indicated by the yellow arrow. The photographer had a westerly view of Chindoki. We will return to this face of Chindoki shortly. We travel now to the El Pindal cave in nearby Asturias, Spain. From this cave entrance, one can see the Sea of Cantabria. A great deal has changed since the time of the Ice Age artists. The coastline was a few kilometers further out due to glaciation. There were also large megafauna, such as giant woolly mammoths and straight-tusked elephants. Toothy hyenas and cave lions were real threats. Great herds of bison and oryx roamed, and fur clothing was more socially acceptable. What remains are the mountains, deep caves, and perhaps the minds of people. The current walking time between the El Pindal cave and Chindoki is about 55 hours, covering 262 kilometers. Google Maps uses 55 kilometers per hour to calculate walk times. In the El Pindal cave, there is the principal panel, which has red markings, engraved lines, and interesting natural irregularities. Most of the cave panels in this presentation were taken by the esteemed Japanese photographer, Takeo Fukawa. They can be accessed from him at texnai.co.jp. We can break the principal panel down at some of its elements and find recognizable natural features from Chindoki. Those features on both have the appearance of a straight-tusked elephant with lowered tusks and trunk. The mountain is living in an animistic sense of the world. On the El Pindal cave wall, there is a rough feature in gold, as marked by the blue arrow, that appears to be a natural irregularity and possibly what drew the Ice Age artist to work the face of this panel. Earlier, I noted that the current walking time between the El Pindal cave and Chindoki is about 55 hours. There is a lot of cave wall space much closer to Chindoki than a 55-hour walk. This cave panel irregularity is in the vein of what Picasso observed when coming to the conclusion that man discovered images in the world around him almost formed already within his grasp. Although this is something beyond what Picasso described, Paridolia outside of the cave is being projected onto the wall in a cave where there's a similar natural irregularity in the rock. When we widen our view of the panel, the head of an unusual character emerges from behind the elephant. The character comes from over and behind the mountain. An elephant, a green arrow marks the right side of its head. The flow of this representation that may be snaking through the red dashes area painted by the Ice Age artist, as indicated by the blue arrows. This character has an impression of the wind and may extend to the peak of the depicted mountain. The wind-like character is not part of the mountain. I believe that this character is a representation of the Basque spirit Ode, who is the spirit of thunder and the personification of storm clouds. Ode is the agent of Mary. This weather spirit appears to be emerging from the side of Mary's cave. The straight-tusked elephant may be another Basque mythological character. In Basque tradition, Mary just transforms into other characters, such as the shapeshifter red bovine they call Axti, to do her bidding. Axti is believed to be a cave dog spirit. When the elephants and woolly mammoths left Europe after the Ice Age, the Basque may have substituted the tusked elephant for the horned bovine. They may be both bulls, just not bulls of the same species. In this case, we have a red spotted elephant reinforcing the Basque connection. So, some researchers suggest that the Basque are descendants from Neolithic farmers who merged with the Mesolithic hunter inhabitants of the region. We appear to be viewing a cave panel representing a mountain with a uniquely Basque name, and mythological characters are the same, with no other language group connections. One could take the next step to consider that some current Basque names of mountains and mythological characters depicted on Upper Paleolithic cave panels may be the same as those spoken by the Mesolithic peoples they met, if not by the Upper Paleolithic cave artists before them. This concept will be presented in another study with more Basque mountains. The gold-colored natural irregularity extends from above the Chindoki elephant, as indicated by the blue arrow, and there is the impression of a second and larger elephant above it. Such an elephant would be partly above the mountain. Ice Age people were known to handle elephant remains, such as teeth, but we don't find their bones on the standard menu. The most commonly depicted animals in Ice Age cave art were not what these people regularly consumed. We'll return to this concept later. The principal panel is wild, to say the least. There are more lines and curved surfaces to explore and possibly connections to be made. Now let's turn our attention to another Upper Paleolithic cave. We travel from Chindoki to the Las Monedas cave in Cantabria, Spain. Las Monedas is in the El Castillo mountain that has a cave of the same name, among others. The current walking time between Chindoki and the Las Monedas cave is about 45 hours. In the Las Monedas cave, there is the panel of mass that appears to be as enigmatic as the El Pindal principal panel. On the panel of mass, we find the Paridolia elephant character visualized on Chindoki, and both are the same as depicted at the El Pindal cave. The peak of the smaller elephant's head is marked by the red arrows, and the blue arrows indicate the head of the larger elephant in shadow. The smaller elephant had previously been identified as a mammoth. We also find the wind character Ode, who comes from behind the mountain. There is also Therianthrope, the mix of human and another animal being in the center. He has foxish ears and peers through a magical mask. One might consider his ears to be elven in today's mythological vernacular. A second mask facing down to the viewer's far right. The panel was previously titled The Panel of Masks based on the mask in the center and the impression of masks among the surrounding dark lines. The Ode and the fox-eared characters appear to be new finds. Had these spiritual characters been refound in modern times, but were too controversial to discuss, or was the data to more fully analyze these images not previously available? I sometimes scratch my head with these questions. Here we have a too closely cropped black and white photograph and what appears to be a drawing of the same from a 1972 Los Modelos cave study. This is where the interpretation ended. The interpretations of most Iberian Upper Paleolithic images were made decades before 1972. We have much more visual information to work with utilizing today's photographic technology and techniques. Those dark lines over O'Day's outstretched right arm are flora, such as the winged broom marked by the red arrows, a large brown maple leaf as indicated by the blue arrows, and a scattering of Spanish junipers that are blowing in the wind. One can sense a gust of air animating the flora. This panel has the appearance of a late summer scene, perhaps in the evening or just before sunrise when the colors of the flora cannot be seen. We have now established collaborative links between the Basque characters depicted on the walls of two Upper Paleolithic caves and a still sacred mountain in the region. In continuing our investigation of the mountain Paridolia cave art hypothesis, we journey to Pica Panamera, that is in Asturias, Spain. Pica Panamera is a fairly low mountain at 763 meters, but has a lot of character. Regional mountaineers refer to this peak as the Little Matterhorn, based on similar geometry with the Matterhorn of the Alps. There is a rounded hill to the viewer's left known as Pindal. The photo of Pica Panamera in the previous image, as marked here with the red arrow, was taken near to alleys, indicated by the yellow arrow. The photographer had an easterly view of Pica Panamera. We may learn more about how Ice Age peoples viewed Pica Panamera at the Las Chimeneas cave in Monte El Castillo. That is about a 14-hour walk. Pica Panamera has a strong resemblance to a panel in the Hall of the Paintings at Las Chimeneas cave. I've taken the liberty to name the scene the Panel of the Bears, in the absence of any known name. Can you see the bears? If anyone is aware of another name, please contact me. Our eyes may have initially drawn to the stronger black lines in the panel, but if we pull back our gaze from them, an unhappy mother bear with at least one cub on her head emerges in relief. The mother bear's forelegs are stationary. She appears to be searching for something. Below the she bear is an alpine coo, a bird common in the region, which looks up to her. This may be a scene in a myth. The bears and dark lines appear to resemble Pica Panamera and the lower Pendendo in the foreground. The she bear has a touch of white on her muzzle, which may represent snow and the white of the mountain. We can see a stronger resemblance with a close-up shot of the mountain. Even features for the bear cub blob on her head. Yet the she bear seems to be coming out of the mountain as if she is part of the geological formation and the sky at the same time. We will return to this concept later. We may be able to find more answers to this arrangement of bears and mountains through these two panels in the Los Monedos cave and Cueva de Venta de la Pera. Both are a long 2 days walk from Pica Panamera. I've also named each of these the Panel of the Bears in the apparent absence of other known names. Can you count the bears? We find a mother bear, again, at least one cub below her. She appears to be protectively pushing back hyenas that have their teeth clamped down on something. Strong dark lines are in front and behind her. Let's take a closer look at the head of the mother bear, whose muzzle can be found with the blue arrow. She has a touch of white on her muzzle, which may represent the snow theme and the white section on the mountain, as we found with the Las Chimeneas mother bear. See her clawed and raised right paw on the back of a hyena, indicated by the red arrow, and the tucked under left paw with the yellow one. She's protecting at least one curled up cub. This cub can be identified by its left ear as marked by the red arrow and the right front paw indicated by the yellow arrow. The ear of this cub had been previously documented to be that of the sole bear on the panel, and which drew me to examine the image more closely. The arm of a second cub may be in the jaws of a hyena, as marked with a blue arrow. Through advances in digital photography, we now have a view of these cave panels that has come a long way from lanterns and sketch pads. Let's take a closer look at this pack of hungry hyenas. The black line represents their raised dorsal hairs. One hyena appears to be pulling at the second bear cub. You can see a hyena's right ear and below it, black pupils in white eyes, as marked by the red arrow. The gnashing teeth engraved in brown and white are indicated by the yellow arrow. This is a dramatic scene that one could visualize in a ceremonial reenactment. The she-bear is emerging from Pica Panamera, and the hyenas are formed from the low hill Pendendo. The dark lines shape the mountain as we found in Las Chimeneas. The mountains would appear to be living beings from an animistic perspective. We found a mother bear again at Cueva de Venta de la Pera in a similar posture to the Las Chimeneas bear. She has two identical bear cubs on her back in this image. The she-bear's muzzle has a touch of white to represent snow and perhaps the white face of the mountain. The cub facing to the viewer's left was identified during the first modern investigation of the cave in 1904. My illustration of the mother bear and other cub facing the opposite direction appear to have been clumped into the earlier observed bear cub. We do not see the strong black lines for the Pico Panamera and Pendendo, as we did with the Las Chimeneas and Las Moneas bear cubs. Still, there is a natural irregularity on the cave wall as marked with the red arrow that resembles the top section of Pico Panamera, with the bear's head sticking out as indicated by the yellow arrow. There are objects in the mother bear's mouth. To the viewer's lower right are the open ends of two different bones from unknown animals, as marked with the blue and yellow arrows. The bone in yellow is a broken foreleg condylus, the frozen head of a different animal, the European wolverine, as indicated by the red arrow. Out of the right side of her muzzle is brown material that I haven't identified. She appears to have scooped up these frozen foods, reinforcing the seasonality to be winter. Bears maintain a prominent place in Basque culture. There is an ethnographical record among Basques that they once believed to be descended from bears. The Basque tradition is a fundamental animistic belief that predates Christianity and was not likely originated by Neolithic agricultural peoples either. This belief could be the remnant of an upper Paleolithic myth that the Basque observed in deep caves and or was passed down by Mesolithic peoples. A standing bear has many human-like physical characteristics. We once competed for the same resources, and this animal being greatly cares for its young, such that we today still archetypally use the term mother bear about protective human mothers. From a spiritual standpoint, the bear also has seasons in its life history strategy, whereby this animal hibernates in a winter cave, thus symbolically enters the underworld and then emerges or is reborn in the late winter or early spring. These cave panel scenes are of protective mother bears in the light snow that have emerged from their cave in late winter. When studying photographs of mountains in northern Spain, I observed many mountains that have elephant-like features, such as found projected onto the walls of El Pindal and Las Monedas. Both the El Pindal and Las Monedas elephants also appear to have large elephants above them, which we don't see in Chindoki. I can see where the artist found the bear inspirations after comparing the cave images to Pica Panamera. This close-up Pica Panamera has the look of a bear's muzzle. Other mountains in the region could have the look of bears, although I haven't seen them. I believe that the answer is not just in the Paridolia found in the mountains, but also in their relative positions to the night sky, during the depicted seasons. Note that the cave artists would have been looking easterly at Pica Panamera during the late winter. If you have seen my other Maui Institute for Astronomy presentations, you may be following my Agatha Christie-like clues. The eastward bear was a less subtle clue. The slide begins where we walk through. This slide begins where we walk through the whodunit of astronomy. In this image generated in Starry Night Pro 8, a software package utilized by professional astronomers and planetariums, we can dial back time and look easterly at Pica Panamera to see what the cave artists would have viewed in that time and place. See how the she-bear, Ursa Major, as marked by the red arrow, would have been viewed meeting the dawn. We see the she-bear here pictured as the ancient Greeks found her form. Maybe the Ice Age artist illustrated her lines differently. Remember the same depicted direction that the bears face on the 3 cave panels. What if the mother bear was drawn in reverse by the Ice Age artist during late winter? Indigenous peoples around the world animate the stars of Ursa Major in different forms as the she-bear travels through the seasons. The heads of both the Las Chimeneas and Cueva de la Venta de la Pera mother bears would fit neatly between the currently depicted Ursa Major tail and her right hind leg. The forward arm of the Las Monedas mother bear could have been represented by the long tail of Ursa Major. I should note that bears don't have long tails, which has been a curiosity among ancient and modern astronomers for the stars of Ursa Major. The constellations also appear to move from left to right across the night sky. The reason why the mother bear in Las Chimeneas and Venta de la Pera caves appear to be frozen in time and in Pica Panamera may be because they couldn't move any further to the viewer's left in the night sky. The heads of the mother bears are also depicted at slightly different positions to the parent horizon. These pictorial differences may be due to astronomical observations over thousands of years that these cave panels were made, which would place the constellation of Ursa Major at slightly different positions relative to the horizon. This astronomical phenomenon is called precession, whereby the Earth wobbles like a top over roughly a 26,000 year cycle and changes our views of stars relative to the horizon. We were once deeply connected to Mother Bear, as she not only reminded us of good child rearing, but also helped us to find our place in time and space. Had she perished in the terrestrial realm, would her reflection in the night sky have disappeared as well? If Mother Bear didn't wake in the spring, would other life not be born? Perhaps our destinies would have once appeared to be inseparable. Any pre-human arrival bear remains in caves would have been evident to Ice Age peoples that these animal beings were there first. Some cave walls had earlier scratches from bears, perhaps suggesting that they were prior artists. Bears continue to claw surfaces to mark their territories, as these Ice Age peoples would have been aware of. I can see how such evidence around early Iberian humans and these images could have developed an origin story of how they, or should we say we, came to be descended from bears, as found in Basque tradition. In my 2018 Maui Institute for Astronomy presentation titled, Who Are the First Astronomers?, we explored this idea of constellations for Aurignacian peoples about 34,000 years ago at the El Castillo cave in northern Spain. This cave is in the same mountain as the Las Chimeneas and Las Monedas caves. I found that many of the Greek constellations, including Ursa Major as a she-bear, were known in the Upper Paleolithic and were obviously an earlier source. 10 identifiable Greek constellations in the correct order, in addition to these depicted 5, were known. These constellations of stars we continue to steal from the night sky as the greatest show people of our time. There are never enough. We can also look to the elephants depicted on the walls of Las Meneos and El Pindal to test if this astronomical perspective continued on. Using Starry Night Pro 8 again, although this time with a westerly view, we look back at how the cave artists would have seen Chindoki in their time and place. See the prominent stars that frame the horns of Taurus, as the ancient Greeks depicted the constellation. The depicted horns of Taurus closely resemble the hind legs and trunk Paridolia of the elephant in Chindoki, as the mountain would have been viewed merging with the dawn. Or did the cave artists see an elephant in the mountain Chindoki, whose peaks of their heads on the cave panels are marked by the red arrows, with the largest shadow of the elephants, as indicated by the green arrows, in the constellation Taurus as part of the same cosmic vision? In either case, the vision of an elephant in Taurus and Chindoki was an Ice Age marker of time and space, and perhaps an indicator of changes in the weather as found in current Basque tradition. Taurus was known as an elephant among the Orignacian peoples 34,000 years ago in northern Spain, as shown here with this previously introduced slide. Some of these constellations, as we envision them, were known almost 20,000 years ago, before the first sightings of Chindoki and Pica Panamera. On our travels across time and space, we found mountains that had the look of and were on the directionally correct horizons as some of these constellations. The mountains are living, not just in the terrestrial realm, but in the sky world as well. One can imagine how magical these meetings with other realms would have been to Ice Age peoples. So magical, the cave artists then projected the view onto their underworld of the cave walls to complete the transcendental experience and perhaps spiritually continue the yearly cycle of life. Remember the foxish ear therianthrope in the Los Monedos cave who peers through the magical mask at the wonders of the cosmos? This character is likely an initiate on his journey of discovery, whom we have become by looking through his magical mask. Here in this psychological interpretation where the sacred and the scientific are one, where we encounter the cosmos through the Paleolithic mind that is still our own. Thank you again for the opportunity to discuss my research. My previous talks here at Maui can be found on the Institute for Astronomy YouTube channel. I am always open to cooperating projects and virtually present my work to community and academic audiences.
All right. Well, thank you, Bernie. That's a great talk. We have a couple of questions, and I just wanted to let everyone know that if you're watching us on YouTube, we welcome questions there. We've got a couple that have been submitted through some slightly different channels so that we don't have the delay. The first question is, were all these cave drawings created about the same time?
Good question. So all, with the exception of the El Castillo ones that I showed at the end on two slides, those were about 34,000 years ago. Whereas these other ones, all the other slides I showed were between 12 and 19,000 years ago. So they weren't created at this, as we discuss things today. It's sort of the same time archaeologically, because that's an archaeological period of the Magdalenian. But these were created over thousands of years. So the tradition with the bears, with those mountains, was 7 to 8, maybe 9, 10,000 years. Good question. So I can't hear you, JD.
Helps if I unmute myself, doesn't it?
Okay, that's good.
There we go. So the next question we have is, how did the artists make their designs on the cave walls? I think this is sort of what is their medium or methods of depicting their art?
Good question. You saw a number of different mediums. Well, to begin with, they started with Paridolia that was on the wall. So there were lines that were geologically created, and they built on those. The black lines are all charcoal, and the red marks are red ochre. But you also saw a lot of chipping away of the rocks too. So there are multiple mediums to multiple techniques on the same medium substrate to create these images. And what is really extraordinary from my perspective is that they found mountains that looked like they found mountains, and then they went into the caves and they found these sort of Paridolia like features, and they created the same characters out of them. My work is the first in Upper Paleolithic cave art that is measurable and repeatable. There is nothing. The two alternative hypotheses, actually the alternative hypothesis, is that this is all due to altered states of consciousness, with the two primary candidates being light deprivation and hallucinogenic drugs. I don't buy either of them, because you've had people who observed a constellation against the Paridolia of a mountain, and walked for days, over a week sometimes, to inside the cave, found Paridolia in the wall, and then went about the act of bringing out their vision, their celestial and mountain vision from the wall. So it's not a measurable approach that's not due to alternate states of consciousness is hallelujah by some, but it's blasphemy by others.
Okay, great. We do have one more question, and again, if anyone has some questions, we'd love to answer them. So all of these the paintings seem to have, a very similar style, and like they were all created by the same artists. Is that? Yeah.
Well, unless he was Noah, who lived more than 150 years, it probably wasn't possible. Because these were yes. So there is a fairly there's a fairly consistent Magdalenian style, and how they date these is they all haven't been dated. The black from charcoal, some of them are calcium carbonate dated. I'm sorry, they're radiocarbon dated, but others are not. And so they'll say this style with these images, we've dated these, but we're not going to date the rest of the cave. We're going to say it's like that, because there is definitely a style, except for the one, the Vento de la Pera, where you have the two bear cubs on the back, which is the older of them, which would date somewhere between 18 and 22,000 years ago. It's a slightly different style. But yes, that's how archaeologists do it, is they look at styles and they say this is like this, therefore it must be Magdalenian, which is not how astronomers measure the distance to stars. Right?
Right. No, that's slightly different than the way we measure different distances to stars. So basically, the idea is that one of the techniques that seems to be used for dating these is the evolution of artistic style. Is that?
Yes.
That a good summary?
60% of Upper Paleolithic cave art from 12 to 40,000 years ago is based on comparisons of things that have been dated. Okay, so I have I'm not going to get into arguments with people who date these things. I'm going with it. Okay, but it actually supports the archaeologists that it's not, they're redoing images, and these images come from the same places as in the case of the mountains. I also have about 20 more of these images. Okay, so we could pretty much cover the night sky. It's fascinating that they found mountains, and they looked in the direction they saw the night sky, and then they saw mountains that sort of looked like them, and then they built on that, and they give us that record in the caves.
Okay, great. Well, I'll throw in one more question that I kind of have been wondering about. So you mentioned that the tail of Ursa Minor or Ursa Major is long. and I've heard, and one of the stories I've heard is that the bear was swung around by its tail and it stretched out. But related to that, I've also heard that generally Ursa Major is a bear in multiple cultures. Is that correct?
Mm. Yeah, we actually find around the world, we find Ursa Major mythology. I mean, it's common. It's actually common. It's almost it is Ursa Major and Orion are the two most common myths, belief systems we have around the world. And what probably happened is that ancient peoples, the Greeks, the Phoenicians, and others, had gone to these caves, and they saw the images, and they walked away with their own stories. And so, in the case of Ursa Major, why Ursa Major has the bear has the long tail is because Zeus, one of the comments, Zeus pulls the tail, and that became the one moving it around. But bears have very short tails. If you've ever seen bears, and so why does Ursa Major have the long tail in the constellation? It's because the predecessor of the Greek Ursa Major had an arm of a bear. It had a head of a bear, so the bear was in reverse, and that creates that whole. But in North America, bear myths are fairly common, and there's elements of those bear myths that connected people in Siberia, and now we can connect them back to Ice Age man peoples, more than 10th, actually up to 34,000 years ago. So JD, being a astronomer is a very old tradition, a very honored tradition. Yes. You are the spiritual leader of our time, and you carry on tremendous responsibility and traditions that, and now you're virtually taking it around the world.
Oh, well, thank you. It's kind of scary that I'm in that role, but thank you. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions, but I just wanted to thank you again. It's always a pleasure to have you speak here. And shall we give the audience a bit of a heads up that you might be speaking again? You plan on speaking again next year, hopefully live? Or
well, we were there last year, and yes. I would have to speak with a mask, therefore you wouldn't have heard me and no one would have seen me. But we had difficulties with car rentals.
Oh yeah.
A huge problem. In fact, the agent said, go pick any car on the lot, and at the airport, we had the last car, and there were people in line behind us. So had we not gotten that car, we would have had no car for the week. So it's a little riskier on the car thing. So this year we're going to the Caribbean. Going scuba diving, and so that's this winter. But yes, we talked a little about Picasso right here. Picasso was an astronomer, and Picasso he integrated his astronomy into some of his greatest works. And the next time that we do come to Hawaii, Picasso's Cosmos might be the conversation.
I'd love to hear that, and I imagine there are quite a few people in the audience who would love that as well. There are no further questions. I just wanted to say thank you. Thanks again for another great talk, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you, JD.
All right. Aloha.
Aloha.
Okay.